Welcome everyone to this year's virtual American Psychological Associations Convention. We are excited to welcome you to this student programming session hosted by the American Psychological Association's Division 52, International Psychology, Division 17's Counseling Psychology International Section, and the Inter-American Society of Psychology, the student work group. My name is Daniel Balva, and I'm the student chair of Division 52, which is a division of the APA with psychologists and students who aim to promote greater global awareness and unity throughout the discipline of psychology. It is my distinct honor to be here in this space with so many wonderful students and colleagues. I would like to take this time to introduce the fellow student representatives from our collaborative hosting organizations. First, it is my pleasure to introduce Nayan Yang and Banu Jivamba, who will introduce themselves as the Division 17's International Section.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to this event. My name is Nayan Yang, she, her, hers, and I'm a co-student representative working with Banu for the APA Division International Section. At the International Section, we strive to promote counseling psychology practice, training, and in research in international context. And particularly, Banu and I have strived to support international students and scholars amid the COVID-19 and anti-immigration policies.
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here. And thank you for introducing us, Daniel. Like Nayan was saying, I am one of the other student representatives of Division 17's International Section. It's been such a pleasure to be able to work this past couple of years to support our international students in different ways, as it's been kind of a challenging year for different reasons for international folks in the United States. And so we've been lucky to do a lot of different work together. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this symposium. I'm helping put it together. I think you'll all be in for quite a treat today. We've received a lot of wonderful, interesting, and very important presentations. So hope you'll enjoy.
Yes, and thank you so much, Nayan and Banu and Division 17's ICP for co-hosting this great programming. And I would now like to take this time to introduce Julio Gomez, who will introduce himself and the Inter-American Society of Psychology and the student work group.
Hola a todos. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad because yesterday we had the opportunity to learn from amazing presentations, and today we are going to continue learning from these important topics for the development of psychology and society. My name is Julio Gomez. I'm from Colombia. I study at the Universidad Pontificia de Bolivariana, and also I'm a member of the Inter-American Society of Psychology, which is a scientific and professional organization, society that involves psychologists from North, Central, and South America and the Caribbean. And there we have a students work group that is working in the development of student networks and the internationalization of psychology. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending this meeting. We are very happy, and thank you especially for improving these networks.
Yes, thank you so much, Julio, and to the Inter-American Society of Psychology student work group for also co-hosting this important programming. During this program today, we will learn more about internationalizing and decolonizing psychology from wonderful students who will share their knowledge from many countries, including Canada, Chile, Colombia, and the United States. And we are especially honored to have Lisette London, who will be our wonderful student moderator for this program. If you have any questions for any of the presenters during the program, we do encourage you to please write them in the chat box. We also encourage everybody to feel comfortable to write the questions in your native language, and we will all work together as a team to translate the questions as well. So we definitely want to highlight that to you. And we'll definitely get to the questions during the question and answer segment of this session. But for now, we hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the programming. Thank you.
experienced by Pakistani immigrants. And my name is Fanny Corrado, and I live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Alberta. And so when we think about shame, we often think about that kind of North American definition of shame, which said that shame is the gremlin that says you're not good enough, that shame is really a focus on the self, and guilt is a focus on behavior. And that shame is this, kind of maladaptive emotion that's mostly correlated with really negative outcomes like addiction, depression, aggression, and that guilt would be the adaptive cousin. And that's also, that's kind of the mainstream definition of shame that we have, but it's also the definition that's really present in the psychology literature. And so within Western research, shame is typically viewed as being about the full self, as signaling the undesirability to the self and others of the self, as something that's mostly maladaptive, associated with a desire to hide and avoid. And Western research has really over-relied on trait shame. So trait shame being, the study of chronic, recurrent feelings of shame that individuals might experience. So almost that, that kind of dysregulated shame experience. And it has put very little focus on state shame. So what would be really in the moment experience of shame, it has rather looked at that tendency to feel shame. And it really has been based in a very specific social cultural context, because those definitions of shame and guilt really mirror the beliefs about shame and guilt that were present in the US in the 19th and 20th century, when the research on those two emotions really started becoming more and more done. And the problem is that, it took a definition that was socially and culturally located and kind of assumed universality, and has been really applied to other cultures and other contexts in kind of a decontextualized fashion. And this is really reminiscent of that assumption that we're so Western educated, industrialized, rich, democratic populations have really been seen as a standard subject when they may actually be especially unrepresentative. And part of the issue is that when there's really that cultural congruence between the investigator, the participants, with most researchers being from Western nations and participants also being often from Western nations, that really mask what we do not know. And that when we look at those Western definitions of shame, there are certain things that are rendered invisible or erased by those definitions. And so when we wanted to look at shame held by Pakistani immigrants to Canada, it was really important for us to make room for another different and differently culturally located understanding of shame. And we worked with Dr. Tahira Jibin and Usama bin Aftab in order to really help us create a design for a study that would allow us to do that. So shame within Pakistani cultures, when we look at what psychology knows about it in a way that centers the knowledge coming from Pakistani culture, there is not much. There's not much research. The only 2 articles published on shame have used Western measures. In anthropology, there is more there, and it really suggests that there is a multiplicity of nuances and meaning when it comes to understanding that emotional experience, and that there are certain frameworks of thoughts like Islam that might be important in understanding how that experience is felt and then understood and talked about. So we really wanted to get a sense of what is the role of shame according to Pakistani immigrants to Canada. Like, how do they make sense of it? How do they see it? And does that change their coping? So we did qualitative interviews by email and phone, and used grounded theory to analyze them. We did multiple things to really ensure quality. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about our methods. And 18 Pakistani immigrants to Canada participated. There was kind of a wide range in terms of ages, and all participants had been in Canada for a maximum of 8 years. We had a good distribution between males and females, between different groups, and most of our participants were Muslim. And what was really interesting is that, there's both continuities and discontinuities in how they see shame compared to a Western framework. So there's really that idea that shame can be associated with an urge to withdraw, that it's a sinking feeling, it's a hard feeling to experience, but also a sense that it's really an emotional experience that has to be contextualized and that it's going to be dependent based on the person and situation. And that it's an experience that really has, that is much more dimensional in the sense that one can experience really lower levels of shame and then increasing levels of shame, with kind of guilt and humiliation being some of the spectrum of the shame experience. People really saw it mainly as an opportunity for an analysis of the situation of the self. So really that idea that shame is a signal and that one needs to understand it. One needs to understand what happened. Was it a forced situation? Was it something else? And that being able to engage with shame in that kind of deeper, more analytic level is a sign of maturity. And it was seen as a sign of maturity because shame was seen really as a blessed feeling, but it was telling the person how to behave in a way that's consistent with who they want to be, and also encouraging that person to talk about the emotional experience, to become a better person, to seek advice. And in that way, shame was very relational. So the experience about shame was, about the self, but being ashamed, the shame that one would feel, one could bring shame to other family members, communities, and that those family members and communities could act either as supports or not. But if they were to act as supportive persons, then they were kind of, automatically also having that responsibility to help the person deal with their shame, because that shame could also be about them insofar the person was a part of their group. And so really that opportunity for having multiple people help regulate the feeling of shame. Individuals also talked about how shame was really embedded within social dynamics and power differentials, with then acting as a form of social control, with maybe people in higher social status, higher power, using shame to control people who had a less of social status. And that last one was really seen very, very negatively by participants. And Pakistanis are not the only ones who perceive shame differently than what would be true in a Western framework. There are different definitions of the self that can come into play, whether the self is kind of seen as stable or more kind of changing over time, whether one recognizes the multiplicity of identities and how those are differentially impacted by experiences. Shame can be influenced by degrees of individualism, so whether the self includes other, whether shame is relevant to people outside of oneself, and whether they have a responsibility to help. And really that idea that there can be positive beliefs about shame, and that shame can mean something more, that it can be a signal, and that it can necessitate really a complex and nuanced understanding with taking into account contextual factors and culture, and that there may be really a role of others in the experience of shame, both in bringing shame upon other people, but it also helping people regulate shame. And that differences in cultures and contexts might explain some of the inconsistency that are present in the literature. That it might explain some of those different findings and that tension between finding associations with hiding, avoidance, violence, and on the other hand, self-improvement and more pro-social behaviors. And so really, I want to invite everyone to consider the possibility that there are both innate mechanisms at play when looking at shame, and also a piece of social construction where the cultural and social context is really going to shape the experience and how people cope with shame. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
So if you have any questions, just feel free to write down in the chat box with the number of the presentation. So this one would be 1.
Hello to all. Professor Ana Acevedo and I, Deanna Correa, from the Pontifical Bolivarian University in Medellin, Colombia, will be speaking to you a little bit about PhD students and their learning experience as a worldwide higher education problem. Professor Ana Acevedo is a psychologist. She has a master's degree in psychopedagogy, and I am a 4th-year psychology student. Let's begin. In this presentation, we will be speaking about the importance of doctoral studies to society and why attrition is a problem, factors that influence the PhD student's experience, our main findings of research done on this experience, and an open conclusion. So what is it that a PhD student brings to the table? Well, their research contributes to the construction of new knowledge, which can then be inherited by society to make better use of resources, problem solving, and contributing to making stronger bonds amongst people. Simply put, research helps us live better. It helps us transform our environment as well as ourselves. So when a PhD student drops out of a program, it represents a loss to society and to humanity as a whole. There are some very high attrition numbers at the PhD level. In Colombia, there aren't specific statistics for this student group. However, using the National Information System for Higher Education, we were able to conclude that almost 3 doctoral students graduated in 2018 for 100 master graduates. In the United States, these numbers are also hard to come by. However, many articles have cited that there is a 50% completion rate that has remained stable since 2005. Recent research identifies that there are many factors that contribute to the decision of a student to drop out of a program. There are mental health troubles, being at the dissertation stage, stressors during the first semester of program, a lack of clarity and preparation as to what a doctoral study program implies, social isolation and emotional exhaustion, conflict between the student and institutional expectations, tutor relationship, perception of lack of camaraderie and institutional support, as well as the type of PhD program. I will now leave you with Professor Ana Acevedo, who will further discuss these factors and the doctoral student experience.
Buenas tardes para todos. Bueno, en esta ocasión entonces vamos a hablar un poco sobre aquellas investigaciones que de pronto se han enfocado a indagar cuáles son las causas de decepción o problemáticas que se presentan en los estudiantes que no les permite tener una experiencia positiva en el transcurso de su educación superior. Entonces encontramos a nivel del rastreo bibliográfico un autor, o mejor dicho, 2 autores que desde el año 1970 se han encargado de documentar esas experiencias y crear modelos teóricos que procuren explicar un poco acerca del por qué estas personas desertan del proceso o presentan dificultades que hacen que se alargue su permanencia en las diferentes carreras de la educación superior. Entonces encontramos a Spadi más o menos en el año 1970, donde empieza a estudiar unos atributos de orden individual donde, digamos, se identifican las principales problemáticas para que los estudiantes puedan culminar sus estudios. Es importante reconocer que este autor se basa mucho en los modelos de la teoría del suicidio, especialmente de Durkheim, para explicar aquellas variables que inciden en la afectación de la permanencia de los estudiantes. Este autor precisamente crea un modelo que se llama modelo del proceso de abandono, donde él habla de que existen como unos factores predisponentes que pueden predecir o no el nivel de permanencia en la educación superior. Uno de ellos, por ejemplo, el comportamiento familiar, las características familiares, el nivel educativo de las personas, de tus familias, la calidad de los lazos y las experiencias con tus pares en esa educación o en ese entorno universitario, ¿cierto? Y también algo que él llamaba como congruencia normativa, ¿cierto? Como esa tendencia a que se pueda cumplir con los ciclos, ¿cierto? De acuerdo como a esas normativas y esas exigencias de cada curso. Bueno, pero también entonces encontramos a este autor quinto que años después revisa la teoría de Spade y menciona que no solamente pueden ser factores de orden individual, sino que también existen unos asuntos que rodean más el contexto. Este señor se inspira mucho en las teorías de explicación del comportamiento organizacional en las empresas y de por qué las personas abandonan las organizaciones, abandonan sus empleos. Y él habla de un concepto que se llama la satisfacción, ¿cierto? Que las personas que están como tal incursionando en ese proceso educativo no se sienten satisfechas, por ende no desarrollan como un grado de congruencia con esa institución que les permita desarrollar la confianza para permanecer y desarrollar como tal las labores y finalizar sus estudios académicos. Entonces, eso también, digamos que ahí hay unos factores que van más allá del individuo, que era lo que nos estaba diciendo Spadi, ¿cierto? Y procura entonces también estudiar mucho esa relación de confianza, esa relación de congruencia y de sincronía entre los valores del estudiante y lo que la institución le ofrece. Bueno, eso como tal, como en temas de cuándo se empieza a hablar frente a esta problemática. Bueno, otro asunto importante que revisamos en la documentación es que gran parte de las investigaciones que se han documentado frente a los estudiantes nivel doctorado y sus problemáticas han partido de una metodología más que todo cualitativa. En nuestro estudio partimos de este mismo paradigma, el paradigma cualitativo, pero bajo un enfoque hermenéutico, bajo la estrategia del análisis del discurso. Nosotros entonces entrevistamos a 4 personas, esas 4 personas le hicimos una entrevista semiestructurada y quisimos escuchar su experiencia en el desarrollo que tuvieron de los estudios doctorados y nos encontramos diferentes variables, diferentes asuntos de orden personal, de orden institucional y la influencia de esos 2 elementos que actúan o no como predisponentes para garantizar que estas personas logren culminar sus estudios. Entonces, aquí va como un adelanto importante a lo que nos encontramos en los resultados. Entonces, dentro de esos factores personales que garantizan como tal la permanencia, entonces está la motivación, están las expectativas, están los asuntos subjetivos, ¿cierto? Están también los elementos a nivel laboral que en cierta medida motivan a las personas a permanecer en sus estudios, ¿cierto? Porque están, digamos, detrás de una meta. También existen unos factores de orden institucional, ¿cierto? Como son las políticas a nivel universitario, como son los programas de beca, como son la calidad de los tutores que pueden ofrecer la universidad y que estos tutores realmente tengan no solamente cualidades académicas, identificación temática que ofrece el estudiante, sino que también presenten habilidades emocionales y habilidades sociales que permitan acompañar más allá de lo académico, ¿cierto? y permitir identificar cuando un estudiante puede desertar o no, o cuando se están presentando dificultades en su proceso. Y como tal, existe esa interacción entre variables personales e institucionales que tiene que ver, por ejemplo, con esa asignación de ese tutor ideal acorde a la temática. También tiene que ver como con la operatividad y cumplimiento de las políticas de beca y cómo la universidad es capaz de seguir acompañando al estudiante pese a esas distinciones de políticas y las diferencias que pueden existir. También está la posibilidad de ofrecer los laboratorios, las bibliotecas, la información suficiente para que los estudiantes puedan alcanzar su desarrollo como tal académico. Esto es como a grosso modo nuestra investigación y los invitamos a que puedan seguir documentándose y puedan seguir nuestra publicación para poder darse cuenta de todas las variables que están incidiendo en la permanencia de los estudiantes en un nivel doctoral. Nuestro gran objetivo, obviamente, es aportar a las instituciones a comprender ese fenómeno y desarrollar sistemas de acompañamiento integral que sean contextualizadas a las necesidades de los estudiantes del nivel doctoral.
Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Again, if you have any questions, just feel free to drop it down on the chat box. Thank you.
Buenos días, colegas. Esta presentación cuenta con las voces de Jorge Fuentealba Valdés, Felipe Varas Pizarro y Pilar Herrera Arroca. Nuestro tema de interés corresponde a la brecha de género en la investigación en psicología, con especial foco en la situación latinoamericana y las experiencias de afrontamiento ante las manifestaciones de tal problemática. Según datos recogidos por nuestro grupo de investigación, el NIPE, próximos a ser publicados, la frecuencia de la participación de mujeres latinoamericanas en publicaciones científicas relacionadas a la psicología y ciencias del comportamiento no tiende a superar el 50%. También en 2020, ODI y WOXIC indicaron que esta tendencia se replica a un nivel global e incluso evidenciaron que conforme aumenta el factor de impacto de las revistas, la participación de mujeres disminuye. Otros antecedentes que arroja la investigación previa respecto a la problemática refieren a una menor citación de autoras y por ende a un menor índice H. Esto se traduce en indicadores bibliométricos más bajos en comparación a los hombres. Destaca también que pese a conformar 3/4 partes de la matrícula de pregrado y posgrado en psicología, solo 1/3 de los puestos como profesores a tiempo completo son ocupados por mujeres. Adicionalmente, aun cuando se alcanzan estos puestos, existe una dificultad en mantener un nivel de productividad que lo respalde, quedándose atrás en comparación a colegas masculinos. Dado este contexto sociocultural adverso, adquiere relevancia la pregunta respecto a cómo las mujeres investigadoras desarrollan mecanismos de afrontamiento que les permitan resistir y desarrollarse en el contexto académico.
La aproximación metodológica utilizada para abordar la pregunta planteada fue la utilización de un formulario de Google, el cual contaba con 4 preguntas de caracterización, 7 preguntas cerradas y 7 preguntas abiertas relativas a las experiencias vividas por las académicas durante sus carreras. Las respuestas entregadas a la pregunta de caracterización y las preguntas cerradas fueron analizadas a través de la utilización de estadísticos descriptivos y de gráficos, mientras que las preguntas abiertas fueron analizadas utilizando la estrategia de análisis temático. 20 académicas latinoamericanas que han tenido una carrera académica en psicología respondieron el cuestionario señalado. Estas mujeres eran de 4 nacionalidades distintas, un 40% de Colombia, un 40% de Chile, un 15% de Argentina y un 5% de mexicanas. En lo que respecta a la caracterización de la muestra anteriormente nombrada, tenemos que una mayoría de las académicas tienen una carrera académica superior a los 10 años, mientras que las edades de las académicas encuestadas fluctuaron desde los 25 hasta los 74 años, con una media de edad de 42.95 años y una desviación estándar de 13.71 años. Un primer aspecto relevante es la representación de la mujer en la formación en psicología. Así, ante la pregunta que abordó este tópico, un 52.6% de las mujeres encuestadas respondieron que no tuvieron suficientes mujeres referentes durante su formación académica y su desarrollo profesional en psicología. Ahora, en lo concerniente a las preguntas relacionadas al sexismo en la academia, Un 90% de las mujeres reportó haber sido afectadas por lo menos una vez por comportamientos que pueden ser catalogados como sexistas, destacando recibir y escuchar comentarios sexistas, sentir que su opinión ha sido infravalorada, interrupciones de hombres al hablar y mansplaining. Un aspecto importante es que un 55% de las encuestadas señala que se ha visto afectada por lo menos por 4 formas de discriminación basada en su género durante su carrera. Finalmente, en las preguntas relacionadas con dificultades en la carrera académica, la mayoría de las mujeres, un 52.7%, señala tener la impresión de que existe una dificultad añadida para desarrollarse en la academia por el hecho de ser mujer. Mientras que lo referente a las labores domésticas, la mayoría de mujeres declara que existe una distribución equitativa de las tareas en sus hogares, lo que podría ser una fortaleza para sus carreras.
Posteriormente, se exploraron 3 ejes mediante preguntas abiertas. El primero abordó la experiencia de maternidad y la carga de trabajo doméstico. 11 mujeres académicas respondieron sobre su experiencia de crianza durante su desarrollo académico. Las dificultades asociadas mayormente reportadas fueron, en primer lugar, la necesidad de replantearse las prioridades, considerando postergar e incluso renunciar a la maternidad en función de su desarrollo académico, o bien aceptar este desafío considerando las implicancias que esta decisión tendría sobre su carrera. En esa línea, las académicas reportaron tener menos tiempo y energía para dedicar a la producción científica y a su trabajo en comparación a sus pares hombres con y sin hijos. Además, mencionan haber sido cuestionadas respecto a su decisión de maternar por parte de colegas y superiores. Aquellas que no consideraron que su experiencia de maternidad interfirió en su desarrollo académico, mencionan haber tenido apoyo de su pareja en la crianza y apoyo institucional para la compatibilización de ambos proyectos. Respecto a la experiencia de trabajo doméstico abordada por 17 mujeres, mayoritariamente se reportó que es una carga que efectivamente interfiere con la productividad, la creatividad y el tiempo dedicado a los proyectos profesionales. Sin embargo, en la mayoría de los casos, esta interferencia no supone un mayor problema debido a la distribución equitativa de las tareas del hogar entre todos los miembros de la familia. En un segundo eje, se abordaron las habilidades de afrontamiento desarrolladas para lidiar con las situaciones provenientes de la brecha de género. 17 mujeres señalan la utilidad del desarrollo de habilidades de expresión para sobrellevar prejuicios que los hombres no enfrentan. Al respecto, una de ellas señala: en discusiones presenciales con otros profesores o colegas, he tenido que aprender a posicionarme de forma enérgica y demostrar todo el conocimiento asociado para plantear un punto, incluso más de lo necesario para la ocasión. En esa misma línea, mayoritariamente se reporta la necesidad de mostrarse asertiva, agradable y de mantener las emociones a raya. Por dar otro ejemplo, tengo mucho temor que si me ven desbordada, por ejemplo llorando, eso me desacredite como profesional. Otra forma de afrontamiento reportada es la validación externa lograda a través de la excelencia académica, además de adquirir responsabilidades adicionales, aumentar la carga de trabajo y extender la jornada laboral a horarios nocturnos. Finalmente, se menciona la importancia de la colaboración con otras mujeres y de levantar redes de apoyo entre pares. En la siguiente subcategoría, 19 mujeres identificaron que los rasgos personales más útiles son la resiliencia, la perseverancia y la disciplina. Además, destaca la habilidad de poner límites claros. En un tercer eje, se abordó la percepción de las mujeres sobre las posibles contribuciones individuales, institucionales y personales para disminuir la brecha de género en el contexto académico. A nivel individual, destaca la cocrianza de los hijos e hijas y la distribución equitativa de las labores domésticas. Además, se menciona la importancia de la colaboración entre colegas, de la creación de equipos de trabajo activos y respetuosos y el reconocimiento del trabajo de las mujeres en el contexto académico. A nivel personal, las académicas creen aportar mediante el apoyo y la colaboración con otras mujeres, así como la inclusión, la entrega de oportunidades y la difusión de su trabajo, particularmente de aquellas mujeres que están comenzando su carrera profesional. Por otro lado, señalan la importancia de teorizar e investigar en torno a las problemáticas de género. No menos importante es el propio ejemplo que entregan estas mujeres, demostrando sus capacidades de docencia, su excelencia académica y sus resultados de investigación, sirviendo de referente para otras jóvenes mujeres científicas. Finalmente, a nivel institucional, se manifiesta la necesidad imperante de flexibilidad para compatibilizar el proyecto familiar con el académico, lo que se traduce como flexibilidad horaria, reducción de la jornada de trabajo, consideración ante eventualidades y cuotas de productividad realistas. Por otro lado, se aborda la reparación de la brecha histórica, en concreto, la disposición de una cuota de género en los proyectos institucionales, concursos de mérito, igualación de salario, promoción de mujeres en cargos administrativos y oportunidades de financiamiento, tales como becas y subsidios exclusivos para mujeres. Como último punto, se menciona ampliamente la necesidad de realizar acciones dirigidas a la comunidad estudiantil, como la visibilización y educación de la problemática de género en toda la comunidad universitaria, la generación de protocolos ante situaciones de abuso, acoso o discriminación, y la instauración de políticas de género claras con estrategias de seguimiento.
A partir de lo recogido en este estudio exploratorio, es posible evidenciar que la brecha de género es reconocida por académicas del área, relacionada a un sexismo percibido en los contextos académicos. Esto se suma a la dificultad para desarrollar sus carreras en comparación con sus pares masculinos y a la escasez de referentes femeninos durante su formación. Los reportes también apuntan a la existencia de dificultades relacionadas al asunto de la maternidad, pero por otro lado se valora positivamente la distribución equitativa de las tareas del hogar, así como el desarrollo de ciertas características como la resiliencia y la asertividad. En cuanto a elementos que aporten a la disminución de la brecha de género, se destaca la importancia de visibilizar las desigualdades, así como fomentar el apoyo mutuo, una mayor inclusión de autoras y la formulación de políticas institucionales. En cuanto a las limitaciones del trabajo presentado, cabe destacar la cantidad acotada de respuestas recogidas, así como la falta de representatividad de más países latinoamericanos. También, al ser un esfuerzo exploratorio, existe conciencia respecto al acercamiento limitado y superficial a las vivencias de interés. En este sentido, nuestras proyecciones investigativas apuntan a una mayor profundización en las experiencias a través de entrevistas. Adicionalmente, esperamos acentuar el carácter interseccional de nuestro trabajo mediante el abordaje de experiencias de mujeres no blancas, no heterosexuales y no cisgénero. Finalmente, creemos que como estudiantes nos corresponde un papel activo en la superación de las brechas de género y otras problemáticas que dificultan la completa inclusión en la ciencia. Debemos ser sensibles a las desigualdades que se producen en nuestra disciplina y en el quehacer científico en general. Esto no es antojadizo, sino que responde a la necesidad de construir una disciplina inclusiva y justa en todos sus aspectos.
Hello, we're student representatives of the International section in Division 17, and today we'll be doing our presentation entitled The Impact of COVID-19 on International Graduate Students in Counseling, Clinical, School Psychology Graduate Programs. In this presentation, we're going to discuss the results of a needs assessment that Banu and I conducted last year, which assessed the experience of international graduate students in counseling, clinical, and school psychology programs amid COVID-19. Broadly, we assessed the following 4 primary aspects: academic concerns, financial concerns, clinical-related concerns, and visa-related concerns. Before we dive into the main results, here are some demographic information about the respondents of this needs assessment. 35 international graduate students in counseling, clinical, school psychology graduate programs participated in this needs assessment. Majority of the respondents identified as cisgender female, and cisgender male and genderqueer followed after. Around 77% identified as Asian, and European, white, and other followed after. In terms of the country of origin, China, South Korea, and India were the 3 highest in order, and we had respondents from various countries in various continents, including Canada, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Indonesia, Iceland, Spain, Middle East, Brazil, and South Africa. In terms of sexual orientation, Around 77% of the respondents identified as heterosexual, and bisexual and gay, lesbian, and queer followed after. In terms of graduate programs, over half of the respondents were in counseling psychology PhD programs, and we had those from counseling psychology PsyD programs, clinical psychology, both PhD and PsyD, and school psychology PhD programs, and some other programs related to the mental health fields. The area and program were pretty diverse from first year to the fifth and above, and respondents reported that there are 3.98 international graduate students in their program on average. Most of the respondents were physically located in the US when they completed this survey, and most of them reported that they do not live in the States with their family. The first aspect we assessed was how COVID-19 impacted on international students' academic work. The quotes on the left are direct quotes from the respondents, and the data suggested similar findings. 37% reported that they struggled with academic work after the COVID-19 outbreak, primarily due to social isolation, financial, and mental health concerns. 33% reported that they rarely or never received support from their graduate program regarding international student concerns, which exacerbated their concerns and stress even more. Mixed results were found related to financial support. Although more than half of the respondents reported that they received stipends and full tuition waiver from their programs, some reported that their financial situation was heavily impacted due to COVID-19. For example, 10% reported that their tuition waivers were partially removed due to COVID-19, and nearly 20% reported that they lost their graduate assistantships as a result of COVID-19.
And under the clinical related concerns, we found that a lot of participants had worries about getting enough hours at their clinical site. About 46% had stated not getting enough individual hours, which was the most and the main concern cited. Following that, we saw about 43% indicating not getting enough assessment hours, and 23% lacking community engagement and or outreach opportunities. And finally, seeing that about 10% indicating racial and ethnic discrimination at site. And to put a quote here that captures the experience of one of the participants, it states, "I am very concerned about my clinical hours. The clinic shut down entirely in March and opened back up only in July. Even after opening up, it has been slow to build a caseload and keep them. Groups have been canceled often as well." And under the other theme that we found, which is visa-related concerns, we found that about over 80% of participants indicated that this is one of the main issues they struggled with. We had participants rank some of their main concerns, and visa-related concerns was ranked in the top 5 by over 54% of our participants. One of the main things that they indicated under this theme is that the inability to visit home and family was a primary concern. And under that and within that, particularly there was concern about being able to return to the US if they visited home of their family, fear of losing their visa status because of leaving the United States, and also having very limited financial support to be able to make the trip home and to come back. And as you can see here, there is a quote that was shared by one of the participants stating, "I am afraid to fly out of the country because 1, I don't trust others in the plane to actually get tested prior to the flight. 2, I'm terrified that I can't re-enter the US once I leave. And 3, COVID has left international students at a financial hardship since our on-campus job hours are significantly reduced." Finally, one of the things we wanted to do in this needs assessment was not only collect data on the challenges and the main issues experienced by international students within the Division 17 international community. We also wanted to get their thoughts and ideas for suggested areas of support. The main things that were indicated and cited was students seeking financial support from the division or getting information outside of the division on where and how they can seek financial support. They also mentioned wanting legal and advocacy support, particularly around how to navigate visa issues, which we know is very complicated and confusing, and especially during the pandemic, became even more so difficult to deal with ever-changing policies and misinformation. They also talked about wanting to be connected with lawyers, having information and resources to help them do so. And there were a few that indicated wanting our division to remove citizenship requirements from APA accredited sites so that as international students, they had more options and opportunities to receive clinical training. Because as of now, there are limitations for international students on whether they can participate in clinical sites that are federal government based. And so that's where this is coming from. The other things that came up was seeking mentorship programs, seeing more of that, and wanting to have more support, being connected with other individuals who are in the field, who have more experiences and more knowledge. And this is something that ICP does do. And so I think wanting for them to have seen more of these efforts put out there. And finally, another area of support that was suggested is having networking events to increase social connections, helping create programs that help create networks and create other folks who may, spaces for other folks who may want to meet other professionals and other students. So to not feel so isolated in the struggles and in the difficult times that they were experiencing. And as you can see in this final quote that we are sharing here that captures everything is, along with the emotional support process groups for international students, I would like to see programs that are focused on advocating for international students, taking action to bring some change in the environment is needed. We want to thank you all for your attention and your interest in this presentation. We hope that from this needs assessment and the information we've had, that we as a division and as other professionals in the field are able to use that information to better support our international students. I do know that from the information on this needs assessment, programming and support and action items have been done and are on the roll to help better support our students. And if you have anything that you want to reach out to us, anything that you want to contact us about, here's our information. Our email is div17icpstudentrep@gmail.com. You can also go to our website to get more information about our organization and think about participating or being a part of it. So thank you again, and we wish you a very good day.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my presentation. My name is Denise Carbella, and I am a clinical psychology student at Albizu University Miami campus. Today, we're going to be going over the significance of mentorship while pursuing a graduate education. While pursuing a graduate degree, students may experience a great deal of mental, physical, and emotional fatigue due to high educational demands and new transitions. When it comes to education, students seek mentorship from professionals in the field who actively promote career growth. These mentors are both knowledgeable and experienced and supply students with guidance throughout their developing careers. Mentors provide students with insight on how to achieve and progress in their studies, as well as assist with adaptation to newly rigorous expectations. So we're going to be going over 4 essential factors that are important for a mentor-mentee relationship. So this is the most important aspect to be considered. when forming this relationship. So we're going to discuss trust and respect. When this is achieved, both individuals will feel they are able to discuss ideas and suggestions without the fear of judgment. Students should also be able to openly express anxieties, doubts, and fears in hopes the mentor will be able to provide constructive feedback. So communication is a crucial component in a mentor-mentee relationship. Students may find that sometimes they feel hesitant to ask questions or ask for help. However, they must remember that this type of relationship works best with collaboration and communication. Encouraging dialogue between the student and a mentor promotes growth for both individuals. Mentors may find that through active communication and understanding, they will be able to pinpoint and gain a better understanding of possible professional areas where the student might need improvement. So now we're going to talk about growth and collaboration. So since mentors are already professionals in the field, they can assist students by introducing new methods of thinking to promote professional and personal growth. Through added teaching methods, they may provide tips on how to handle a multitude of professional situations. Additionally, mentees and mentors may benefit from collaborating while discussing new ideas and strategies to fulfill professional initiatives. It's also important to note that mentorship is a significant part of students' professional development across different fields and programs throughout the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about culture, communication style, diversity, and representation. So a mentee-mentor relationship can be impacted by cultural factors. The relationship between a mentor and a mentee or student can look different based on an individual's culture. Students from different cultures may have different values and or see and experience the world differently from their mentors. So culture is something that's very important to keep in mind in a mentee-mentor relationship. It's also important to discuss communication styles, for instance, how feedback is given, and also values that drive the relationship, such as respect, authority, rules, and trust. Autonomy should also be discussed when communication styles are instilled. So the role of diversity. Some mentees or mentors may feel more comfortable working with individuals of their same background versus someone who's cross-cultural. Due to the complexity of mentoring, especially cross-culturally, students will benefit from mentee-mentor relationships where mentors are equipped with an appreciation for diversity. It's important to have representation for students who are from minority populations. So remember, graduate students face a great deal of challenges, leaving them with a multitude of questions and concerns throughout their studies and obtainability of professional goals. Because of this, mentors work on demystifying graduate school and assisting students in becoming autonomous learners. Mentors play a pivotal role in the guidance and navigation of a student's graduate educational journey and professional development. Remember, mentorship is not a one-size-fits-all. The mentor-mentee relationship may vary across all cultures, and this does not mean that one style is better than another. Both the mentee and mentor may also benefit from the potential growth of a cross-cultural relationship. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a good day.
Hello, everyone. Good job, all presenters. We're so excited. That was amazing. Again, my name is Liseth, and I will be the moderator for our portion of the question and answer segment. Before we get started with the questions, we will be beginning our COVID-19 session in about 10 to 15 minutes, right after this question and answer segment. So you guys, if you guys are coming in right now, please stick around and we will be doing some questions and then going into the next sections right away. So just to go up, I'm scrolling up on all the chat for the first presenter. And just to remind everyone, the first presentation was acknowledging cultural and social context in studying shame experienced by the Pakistani immigrants. And we have a question. We had a question for our first presenter, and that was, Fanny and Dr. Erica Wooden. Make sure. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put it on the chat. And I'm going to translate it in Spanish as well. Vamos a presentar el otro programa en 10 y 15 minutos, por favor. Si pueden poner su pregunta aquí, lo pueden escribir, yo puedo leer la información, lo pueden poner en español o en inglés y yo lo voy a poder leer y podemos traducirle también. And if you guys have, is there any other languages that you guys want to write, we will go ahead and translate it and read those questions as well. Okay, there's, oops, the questions are coming in. The questions are coming in. Okay, so we're moving into the second one. So the first question that I'm seeing here is Diana and Anna, and that is the second presentation, which is PhD students and their learning experience, a worldwide problem in higher education. You guys have a question. It says, based on the factors identified, have you found a specific strategy in addition to the strategies for bachelor's or master's studies to help reduce the attrition? And you guys can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can put in the chat, whichever one you're comfortable with.
All right, thank you so much for the question. The first thing that is important to keep in mind is that every PhD student is different. It depends on the student and what the student will need to help them complete their program is going to be different from what another student needs. In that sense, the person that's going to be accompanying them throughout their process needs to keep this in mind. Different research has identified strategies. There are strategies in place. Some universities have thought of mentorship programs, as Denise illustrated, right, the last presentation. It is very important to help reduce isolation feelings. And these isolation feelings will eventually lead to mental health problems that can be a little bit tougher to treat afterwards if you let them continue on. Other strategies involve bettering the relationship between the student and their tutor, their thesis tutor. Maybe making sure that their tutoring goes beyond the academic sphere and that it really touches on a more personal ground, because PhD students are faced with this huge task of basically constructing knowledge, and this impacts a person at a very deep personal level too. In this sense, greater preparation for the tutor, not only in their academic field where they have led their research before, is important. So maybe like more social skills as well, because this has been also identified not only in our research, but in other researches as well. Also, greater control of what goes on in their tutoring sessions. Sometimes these sessions are really spread apart. Other times they're task oriented, so they will leave the student with a task to perform in however long they need, and then they would meet to kind of like revise how that went. And sometimes students need a little bit more than that. I don't know if Professor Anna has anything to add. Okay, well, this is what we were able to identify for now. I think this has to be like an ongoing research. There is still a lot to be investigated on the subject, definitely.
That is so true. Thank you so much. Yes, that is completely true. I truly believe that we need to know a little bit more and address the mental health and all the different things, especially the mentorship. So thank you so much. So the second question that I have on the chat here is for Francisca and your team, and that is the presentation on an update in the gender gap in psychological research and some experiences coping with it. And the question is, how might you recommend that we advocate among academic journals to amplify the voices of female researchers? And you guys can unmute or put in the chat, whichever you guys are comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. Following what was found in the study, it will be important to open the themes of the journals that work on gender issues, in addition to encourage a kind of awareness about the possible prejudice that they might have when reweaving women's work. Sorry for my English. And the goal of this is working together and go toward the construction of an inclusive and discipline.
Oh, thank you. Were you continuing? I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off because there was an echo. So did you want to continue?
No, this is all. Thank you.
No, thank you. And anybody else in your team wanted to respond? Y si quieres contestar en español también, por favor, lo pueden hacer. Estamos en el programa de International Psychology, so podemos hablar en español también, if you're comfortable with that too. We're going, go ahead. Puedes continuar, Francisca, si quieres.
Ya, perfecto. Sí, lo voy a decir en español, claramente es mi lengua madre. Claro, la idea en el fondo sería poder trabajar un poco con de que los editores den cuenta de lo que significa también los prejuicios que hay en las publicaciones que existen de mujeres. ¿Ya? También la meta siempre va a ser poder trabajar igual en conjunto hacia crear una disciplina que sea mucho más equitativa y también inclusiva con lo que significan los roles de la mujer, igualmente. Las revistas específicamente podría también abordar estos temas de género que son sumamente importantes, poder visibilizar en primer lugar lo que significa la brecha de género y que realmente existe, ¿ya? Yo creo que el primer paso que podemos dar es poder visibilizar efectivamente que existe una brecha de género y que de igual manera afecta considerablemente el desarrollo profesional en el ámbito académico de todas las mujeres, sobre todo en psicología. Así que esa es mi respuesta. Muchas gracias.
No, gracias. Y gracias por hacerlo en español. Y quiero leer más información de tu papel y todo lo que estás haciendo también, porque tenemos que saber más información de las mujeres que están haciendo escribiendo en cualquier journals aquí, en cualquier país, porque la voz de nosotros tenemos que estar ahí. So, gracias por tu presentación.
Dejaré el correo en caso de cualquier duda, ¿ya? Muchas gracias.
De nada, gracias. So the next question we have for Banu, and I'm going to read. The title is The Impact of COVID-19 on International Graduate Students in Counseling and Clinical Social School Psychology Graduate Programs. And the question is, what results from the needs assessments in research you completed did you find the most surprising? And what do you believe is the greatest area of advocacy that we can begin addressing as a profession?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, I was kind of thinking about really what was most surprising, and it's kind of a mix. It was surprising and also really not very surprising, because the things that were highlighted are the issues that the international students in the US were facing, especially the ones who are part of the international section, is that lack of support, the experiences in terms of finishing their program requirements and getting funding, getting resources. These were things, and Nayan, please jump in as well here, because you and I have talked about this so much. We heard so much about this in the support spaces that we've had for international students this past year. And so I think the thing that was kind of surprising, and Nayan was highlighting it to me in our own conversation, is that it's so consistent. The issues that we've heard about and students talk about is so consistent to the data that we have. So I think that kind of just showed us how big the problem is and just how it continues to happen. Even though when we had the idea for the needs assessment, it came up from the support space that we had, and we're like, hey, we need to find out more like what other students are experiencing right now. And so by the time we got the need assessment out, we got to look at the data, it was some time between then, and the results were pretty consistent from when we had the idea to when we looked at it. So yeah, Nayan, I'm wondering if you had anything to add to that piece for that question.
Yeah, thanks for addressing, Banu. I echo 100% what you said. It was surprising because there were so many students reflected responded like consistently of what we've heard in the supporting space. But in the meantime, it wasn't that surprising because of everything that we've heard in the supporting space, how much they struggle in being an international student in the States while not getting enough support in their own programs. Although the responses varied depending on the programs that they're in. But the most thing that stood out to me was that their programs sometimes just don't even know how to address international student concerns. So those were the things that stood out to me the most. And I think in terms of the advocacy piece, I feel like acknowledgement, right? Knowing that international students exist, that would be the first step to know, even though people are aware that there are international students, but sometimes people just aren't aware of how just being an international student in the States, there are so many things to navigate. And it seems like not many people in the programs are aware of those issues. So maybe that would be a first step that we could start doing it, and then hopefully supporting them legally if there are any legal issues come up.
Yeah, and to add to what Nayan just said, I think it's making the advocacy part of it like a higher level thing. So somewhere within APA, within the division, helping, really professionals coming together, people would have more power, I guess, and privilege, really advocating for change in policies or maybe even regulations for programs. And if programs are going to take in international students, and a lot of times programs also recruit international students or invite them, to really have certain things in place and for faculty and departments to know, like what Nayan was saying, what the challenges and the typical supports that need to be in place to support and take care of our students as they continue to live in this country, in the US particularly, for extended periods of time. So for the university to have funding, to have legal support and all of these things that our students have been naming and saying that they were lacking during a time of great distress. And honestly, I think even if it wasn't for the pandemic, students have already been experiencing this to some degree. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. And if you guys put your emails on the chat. So if anybody has any questions, they can email you guys directly. That'd be so awesome. Thank you so much. We have one more question, and that is, oh, sorry, gotta scroll up. And this is from the, thank you for the emails. Okay, so we have one more question, and this was for the, you guys as well. And the question, I guess for everyone, is the results of the international students study on COVID was quite disturbing. Great that Division 17 is working to address the issues. Are there plans to network with other divisions and associations to do the same?
Yes, yes, definitely. We've seen, and I am please sorry about forgetting the people that have been involved in organizations have been involved, but so the student affiliate of 17, so SAS, has also been working with like our co-chair and the VP of International Affairs in helping come up with programming and advocacy and change of policies and things like that. So I know they've been involved in trying to create more advocacy and action items to help support international students. I believe they are also working on like seeing how we can get I'm not sure where we are in that process, but like getting legal support and help available for international students. And like even doing something like this, collaborating with Division 52 and doing more connecting and networking is something that I think was pushed up a bit more. So because we realized that we need to connect with more folks and have more spaces for our students. And so these are all things that we started to do more of, and they've been definitely more push. And we've had, I believe, just even like a brochure and like information that was created and that we shared across different listservs so that folks can understand the typical terms that are associated with visa and international student status, and also how they can support their international students, and ideas and resources they can share with them. So yes, we've had more folks being interested and more folks reaching out and trying to find ways that for us to network and support each other with this.
Yeah, and also international section, there we have like chairs, co-chairs, and outgoing chairs. They've been striving to address these issues like at the division level, and then hopefully going to the APA main level too. So that's what we're doing as an international section.
Thank you so much. That's great. I think that the networking is definitely important, and we see everyone on this Zoom from all over the place. And one thing is, it's clear that we're all experiencing the same issue. And so yes, continue with the research, because we definitely need to be clear and more and find better solutions to address the the divisions and all the things that international students are experiencing. So, but thank you so much. I put the information for our last presenter, Denise, and that was the significance of mentorship while pursuing a graduate education. I put her information on the chat. So if anybody needs to send her questions, you guys can do so. All the emails for each presenter is on the chat. If you have not put your email as a presenter, please do so, so that people can go ahead and send emails to you and contact you. So this ends the question and answer portion of the first section of our convention, and we will be moving into the COVID-19 section of our presentation. Thank you so much, and I'll give it back to Daniel.
Thank you so much, Lisette, for moderating such a wonderful session, and to all our great student presenters, thank you so much. Y gracias a todos y todas for just such wonderful work. So thank you all.